The text message came at 11:58 p.m. on my birthday, 2 minutes before the day would end. "Hey, Mom. Sorry I missed your birthday. Work's been crazy. I'll make it up to you." No birthday wishes all day, no call, not even a proper apology, just a hastily typed message that screamed afterthought. This from the son I'd raised alone since he was 4, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, including my own dreams. As I stared at those cold, impersonal words glowing in the darkness of my bedroom, something inside me finally broke. The dutiful, ever-forgiving mother in me died that night. In her place rose a woman who'd spent 24 years putting everyone else first, and who was finally ready to remember her own worth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Rebecca Wilson, and for most of my adult life, I've been known simply as Tyler's mom. It wasn't always that way. Before motherhood consumed my identity, I was Becca, the ambitious art major with big plans to open my own gallery, the girl who painted until sunrise and traveled whenever she could scrape together enough money for a bus ticket. I still remember the smell of oil paints and the feeling of infinite possibility. Then came Tyler, unexpected, unplanned, but immediately loved with a fierceness that shocked me. His father, Mark, couldn't handle the responsibility. "I'm not ready to be tied down," he said, as if I had been eagerly awaiting teen motherhood, while he'd been ambushed. He left Lakeside before Tyler turned 4, sending child support checks that grew increasingly sporadic until they stopped altogether when Tyler was 10. I never planned on being a single mother at 22, but life rarely follows the paths we imagine for ourselves. I put my art dreams on hold and took a steady job teaching elementary school, trading canvases for construction paper, gallery openings for parent-teacher conferences. The pay wasn't great, but it came with health insurance and summers off to be with Tyler. We made it work in our little 2-bedroom house in Pine Grove, the older neighborhood across town from the glittering high-rises of Westlake's financial district. Tyler was worth every sacrifice. He was a bright, curious child with his father's deep dimples and my stubborn determination. I still remember the way his little hand felt in mine as we walked to school each morning, how he'd collect interesting rocks and leaves to show me later, his eyes wide with excitement over each new discovery. For his birthday each year, I'd somehow managed to scrape together enough for a weekend at Blue Pines Retreat, a modest cabin resort by the lake. It wasn't fancy, but those weekends became our tradition, our special time together under the stars, making s'mores and talking about his dreams. "One day I'm going to be a wildlife photographer, Mom," he'd say, pointing his disposable camera at deer drinking from the lake at dawn. "I'll take pictures of lions in Africa and polar bears in Alaska, and you'll come with me. We'll have adventures all over the world." I'd smile and tuck those words away like precious gems, using them to light the dark moments when bills piled up or when I was grading papers at 2 a.m. after sewing a costume for the school play Tyler had forgotten to mention until the night before. In those moments, I'd think, it's all worth it. One day he'll achieve his dreams, and my sacrifices will have meant something. The recession hit us hard when Tyler was in middle school. The school district froze teacher salaries, and I took on tutoring after hours to make ends meet. There were months when I skipped meals so Tyler could have proper nutrition. Growing boys need protein after all. He never knew about this. I became skilled at hiding our financial struggles, brewing weak coffee to mask my hunger, telling him I'd already eaten when I served him the last of the chicken. "Mom, you work too hard," 14-year-old Tyler said one night, catching me at the kitchen table surrounded by student assignments at midnight. "I'm fine, honey," I assured him, hiding my exhaustion behind a smile. "I just want to make sure you have everything you need. When I grow up and get rich, you won't have to work anymore. I'll buy you a big house with a studio so you can paint again," he promised, planting a kiss on my forehead before heading to bed. I held on to those words through his turbulent high school years, when college applications loomed and the realization hit that we couldn't afford most of the schools he dreamed of attending. I remortgaged our little house to help with tuition at Westlake University, the only decent school within commuting distance. To my surprise, Tyler didn't complain about living at home during college. By then, he'd abandoned his wildlife photography, dreams in favor of business marketing. That's where the real money is, Mom, and spent most of his time studying or at campus events. It was during his junior year that Tyler met Megan Brooks. She came from Lakeside's wealthiest family. Her mother, Patricia, had built a real estate empire from nothing and now owned half the commercial properties in Westlake's business district. The first time Tyler brought her home, I saw the way her eyes scanned our modest living room, taking in the secondhand furniture and the water stain on the ceiling from last spring's leak. I'd made my famous lasagna, spending more than I should, have on good cheeses and organic beef, wanting to impress this girl who clearly had grown up with much finer things. "It's very homey," Megan said, picking at her food while Tyler watched her with puppy dog eyes. "Tyler tells me you're a teacher, Mrs. Wilson." "Elementary art," I confirmed, noticing she'd barely touched the lasagna. 20 years now, at Lakeside Elementary." "That's dedicated," she replied with a tight smile. "My mother always says teachers are the unsung heroes of society. Of course, she donated a new gymnasium to Westlake Prep last year. Philanthropy is something the Brooks family takes very seriously." I nodded, swallowing the unspoken message. "Your contribution is small, ours is significant." That night marked the beginning of subtle changes in Tyler. He started commenting on things he'd never noticed before: the outdated kitchen appliances, my sensible economy car, the fact that I still bought some clothes from thrift stores. "Mom, don't you think it's time to upgrade a little?" he asked once, after returning from a weekend at the Brooks Lakefront mansion. "You've been using the same phone for like 5 years. "It still works perfectly fine," I'd replied, not mentioning that buying a new smartphone would mean dipping into the emergency fund I'd been slowly building. After graduating with honors, Tyler landed a job at Horizon Tech, a prestigious marketing firm in Westlake's financial district. With his first paycheck, he bought himself an expensive watch, for making the right impression, Mom, and moved into a sleek, high-rise apartment that cost more per month than I made in 6 weeks. I told myself his growing distance was normal, just part of becoming independent. When he missed Sunday dinners or forgot to return my calls, I made excuses. He's busy building his career, finding his way in the adult world, establishing himself. His engagement to Megan after 2 years at Horizon Tech wasn't a surprise. The dinner where they announced it, however, was revelatory. Patricia Brooks had arranged everything at Lakeview Bistro, the most exclusive restaurant in town, where my entire monthly salary wouldn't cover dinner for 4. "Of course, we'll handle all the wedding arrangements," Patricia announced before I'd even had a chance to congratulate the couple. "I've already spoken with the event coordinator at the Grand Westlake Hotel. They can accommodate us next June." "That sounds wonderful," I said, trying to mask my dismay at being so cleanly removed from the planning process. "I'd love to help with anything you need." Patricia patted my hand as if I were a child offering to help with adult matters. "That's sweet, Rebecca, but everything's under control. Megan has very specific visions for her special day, and we have the resources to make them happen." I nodded, feeling the sting of her words. Beside me, Tyler studied the wine list intently, avoiding my eyes. "Tyler's moving up quickly at Horizon," Patricia continued. "Nathan says he's on track for senior management within 5 years. Of course, having the right connections helps. I play golf with Nathan's wife every Thursday." "Mom," Megan interjected with a tight smile, "Mrs. Wilson doesn't need to hear about all that." "Oh, please call me Rebecca," I insisted for the 10th time. "Mrs. Wilson is probably more interested in hearing about the honeymoon," Megan continued, as if I hadn't spoken. We're thinking Bali or maybe the Maldives. As they discussed five-star resorts and private bungalows over water, I calculated how many extra tutoring sessions I'd need to afford a decent mother-of-the-groom dress. Throughout dinner, Tyler barely looked at me, laughing too loudly at Patricia's jokes and reaching for Megan's hand at every opportunity, as if to physically demonstrate his allegiance to his new family. When the check came, I reached for my purse, but Patricia waved me off. "Please, this is our treat. We know teacher salaries aren't exactly generous." I should have recognized then what was happening. Tyler wasn't just growing up in a way. He was erasing the parts of himself that connected to his humble beginnings. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. To me. In the months that followed, Tyler became increasingly absent from my life. Our weekly phone calls dwindled to monthly, then to occasional texts. The wedding planning proceeded without my input. I received formal updates via email from Megan's assistant. When I offered to host a small family dinner before the rehearsal, something modest but heartfelt in our old tradition, Tyler gently declined. "Megan's parents have already arranged everything at the hotel, Mom. It's easier to keep everything in one place for the out-of-town guests." As the wedding approached, I found myself alone in the house, more conscious than ever of the empty space where Tyler's laughter used to echo. I spent evenings looking through old photo albums, Tyler blowing out birthday candles on homemade cakes, Tyler proudly holding up his first caught fish at Blue Pines, Tyler in his graduation cap with his arm around my shoulders. I wondered when he had stopped being that boy who promised to take care of me someday. My birthday fell on a Tuesday 3 months before the wedding. April 15th had never been a grand celebration. Most years it was just Tyler and me sharing. A cake from the local bakery, maybe splurging on takeout instead of cooking. But he had never forgotten it. Not once in 24 years. Even during college finals, he'd managed at least a handmade card and flowers from the grocery store. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual, a small flutter of anticipation in my chest despite everything. I checked my phone. No messages yet, but it was only 6 a.m. Tyler was never an early riser. I got ready for work, putting extra effort into my appearance, wearing the turquoise necklace Tyler had given me for Christmas years ago. At lunch break, I checked my phone again. Nothing. I told myself he was busy. Perhaps he was planning to call after work or even surprise me with dinner. By late afternoon, with still no word, the first tendrils of hurt began to curl around my heart. "Big plans for your birthday, Rebecca?" asked Howard, the principal, as we passed in the hallway. After the final bell. "Oh, probably just a quiet evening," I replied with a forced smile. I drove home slowly, still holding out hope that Tyler might call. My house was dark and silent when I arrived. No flowers on the porch, no card in the mailbox. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. It didn't. I checked social media and saw that Tyler had posted several times that day. A business lunch, a joke about coffee, even a photo of a new tie he'd purchased. My son had time to share his daily minutia with hundreds of acquaintances, but couldn't spare 30 seconds to wish his mother happy birthday. By 9 p.m., I gave up waiting and cut myself a slice of the small cake I'd bought from the grocery store. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered to the empty kitchen, not bothering to light a candle. I was already in bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark, when my phone finally lit up at 11:58 p.m. Tyler's text was brief, generic. "Hey Mom, sorry I missed your birthday. Work's been crazy. I'll make it up to you." I read it over and over in the dark, each word a small knife. Not even a proper, happy birthday. No, I love you. Just an obligation hastily remembered at the last possible moment. Something shifted inside me as the clock ticked over to midnight, officially ending my birthday. A lifetime of putting Tyler first, of excusing his growing indifference, of making myself small so he could shine. It all crystallized into a cold, hard clarity. I had given my son everything, including parts of myself I could never get back, and he couldn't even give me a timely birthday wish in return. For the first time in over 2 decades, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my resentment. I didn't reply to his text. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I almost never did. Instead of grading art projects or preparing lessons, I spent the day going through old photos and keepsakes. In the attic, I found boxes of Tyler's childhood artwork, report cards, sports trophies, all carefully preserved. I found the journal I'd kept during his early years, documenting his first steps, first words, the little moments that had seemed so precious. In one box, buried beneath high school memorabilia, I found a manila envelope I'd almost forgotten about. Inside was a letter from Blue Pines Retreat dated 13 years ago, addressed to Tyler Wilson. I remembered now. It had arrived during his sophomore year of high school, but he'd been away at a basketball tournament. I'd set it aside, meaning to give it to him when he returned, but somehow it had been forgotten in the chaos of daily life. I opened the envelope, curious about what the resort would have been writing to a teenage boy. Inside was a certificate and a letter. Dear Tyler Wilson, congratulations. Your essay, The Birthday Gift, has been selected as the winner of our annual Young Writers Contest. Your moving account of saving your allowance for 6 months to buy your mother a professional art set for her birthday because you knew she'd given up her dream of being an artist to raise you deeply touched our judges. Your description of her tears when she opened the gift and the promise you made to ensure she would have a proper art studio when you grew up was particularly powerful. As the contest winner, you are entitled to a free weekend stay at Blue Pines Retreat. Please contact us to arrange your prize. Sincerely, Emma Harrington, Events Coordinator, Blue Pines Retreat. I sat back, stunned. I remembered that birthday when Tyler was 11, the beautiful art set that must have cost far more than a child's allowance could cover, even with 6 months of saving. I'd assumed Mark had sent him the money for it, one of his rare gestures of parental involvement. The essay, the contest, the promise of an art studio, Tyler had never mentioned any of it. As I held the yellowed paper, another memory surfaced. Tyler at 14, finding me grading papers late at night, promising that when he grew up and got rich, I wouldn't have to work anymore, that he'd buy me a house with a studio so I could paint again. What had happened to that thoughtful boy who'd once written award-winning essays about his mother's sacrifices? When had he transformed into the man who couldn't even remember my birthday until it was almost over? I carefully folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Then I did something I'd never done before. I logged into my retirement account and requested a full statement of my savings. After 20 years of teaching and careful, if meager, contributions, I had accumulated a modest sum. Not enough to retire comfortably, but perhaps enough for something else entirely. Next, I called my doctor and scheduled the physical I'd been putting off for 3 years, always too busy with work and too concerned about the cost. Then I called my friend Diane, who owned a small restaurant in town. Rebecca, how are you? And happy belated birthday. Diane's warm voice was a balm after yesterday's disappointment. Thanks for remembering, I said, my voice catching slightly. Listen, do you still have a friend who works in real estate? Carol? Sure, she's doing great business over in Westlake now. Why? Are you finally thinking of selling that little house and upgrading? Not exactly, I replied, an idea taking clearer shape with every passing minute. But I do need some professional advice about property values and investments. By the end of the day, I had appointments with a real estate agent, a financial advisor, and a lawyer. I also had the beginnings of a plan that made my heart race with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. For 24 years, I'd lived for Tyler. Perhaps it was finally time to discover who Rebecca Wilson could be when she put herself first. I still hadn't responded to Tyler's text, and he hadn't sent a follow-up. The silence between us stretched like a vast, uncharted territory. In previous years, I would have bridged that gap immediately, making it easy for him to maintain our relationship with minimal effort on his part. This time, I let the silence stand. 3 days later, while I was grading assignments during my lunch break, my classroom door opened. I looked up, expecting a student or colleague, and instead found myself face to face with Jack Reynolds. "Mrs. Wilson?" he said, a warm smile spreading across his face. "I was hoping you'd still be teaching here." It took me a moment to place him. Jack had been one of my students 15 years ago, a quiet boy with remarkable artistic talent but difficult home circumstances. After he graduated from elementary school, I'd lost track of him, as happened with most students. "Jack? What a wonderful surprise." I stood to greet him properly. "What brings you back to Lakeside Elementary?" "I was in town for a business meeting and couldn't resist stopping by to see if my favorite teacher was still inspiring young artists." He glanced around my classroom, taking in the children's artwork displayed on every available surface. "Looks like you're still working. You're magic." We chatted for a few minutes about his life since elementary school. He'd gone to art school on a scholarship, then started a design firm that had grown tremendously over the past decade. Now he had offices in 3 cities and was considering expanding to international markets. "I've always wanted to thank you." "Properly," Jack said, his expression turning serious. "You were the only adult who ever took my art seriously. Those extra supplies you gave me, the books you lent me, the way you talked to my parents about art school possibilities, it changed everything for me. You saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself back then." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "You had extraordinary talent, Jack. I just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to develop it." "Well, I never forgot what you did for me." He handed me a small white envelope. "I'd be honored if you'd consider this." Inside was an invitation to a gallery opening in Westlake the following weekend. Jack's gallery, featuring his work, alongside other artists he'd discovered and mentored over the years. "I'd love for you to be there," he said. "In fact, I've been thinking about starting a scholarship program for young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. I was hoping I might be able to pick your brain about how to structure something like that." After Jack left, I sat at my desk, turning the elegant invitation over in my hands. His visit had stirred something inside me, a reminder of the impact I'd had as a teacher, yes, but also a glimpse of what it felt like to be valued, to have my contributions acknowledged and appreciated. The contrast with my own son's behavior couldn't have been more stark. A former student had driven across town to thank me personally and invite me to celebrate his success, while Tyler couldn't manage a timely text message on my birthday. That evening, I added another appointment to my growing list with a career counselor who specialized in helping professionals transition to new fields. I also pulled out my old art supplies from the closet where they'd been gathering dust for years, set up a small easel in the spare bedroom, and for the first time in decades, I began to paint. As I mixed colors and watched the canvas come alive, under my brush, I felt something unfamiliar blooming in my chest. Possibility. For so long, I'd defined myself solely through the lens of motherhood and my responsibilities to Tyler. Now, with my son clearly charting a course that increasingly excluded me, I found myself contemplating a radical question. What did Rebecca want for herself? The answer, I was beginning to realize, might be as colorful and complex as the painting taking shape before me. The weekend of Jack's gallery opening arrived with perfect spring weather, sunlight dancing through cherry blossoms as I navigated downtown Westlake's busy streets. I'd spent more time than I care to admit deciding what to wear, eventually settling on a deep blue dress I'd purchased years ago for a school fundraiser but never worn. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail for classroom art projects, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. The woman in the mirror looked different somehow. Perhaps it was the spark of anticipation in her eyes. Jack's gallery occupied a renovated industrial space, all exposed brick and soaring ceilings with skylights that bathed the artwork in natural light. A small crowd had already gathered when I arrived, people in elegant attire holding champagne, flutes and conversing in hushed, appreciative tones about the pieces on display. I felt momentarily out of place, a public school teacher amid what appeared to be Westlake's cultural elite. "Mrs. Wilson." Jack appeared at my side, genuine pleasure lighting his face. "You came. I was worried you might back out." "I wouldn't have missed it," I assured him, accepting the glass of champagne he offered. "This place is remarkable, Jack. You've accomplished so much." He guided me through the gallery, introducing me to colleagues and collectors as the teacher who changed my life. With each introduction, each warm handshake and interested conversation, I felt something shift inside me, a long dormant part of myself reawakening to possibilities beyond classroom walls. "And this section," Jack said, leading me toward a corner display, "is what I wanted you to see most." The wall before us held a series of paintings unlike the others, rich with color and emotion, abstract yet somehow familiar. My heart stuttered as I realized why. They were inspired by the elementary art lessons I'd taught years ago, reimagined through the sophisticated technique of an accomplished artist. "My Foundations series," Jack explained. "Each piece based on something you taught us. Remember the day you showed us how primary colors could create an entire world of possibility? Or when you brought in those bizarre objects and had us draw shadows instead of the things themselves? Those lessons stuck with me, shaped how I see everything." Tears pricked behind my eyes as I studied the canvases. All these years, I'd wondered if anything I taught truly mattered in the long run. Here was the answer, vibrant and undeniable. "They're extraordinary," I whispered. "I want you to have one," Jack said decisively. "Your choice. Consider it a very belated thank you." I started to protest, knowing the paintings likely cost thousands, but Jack wouldn't hear it. "Please, it would mean a lot to me." As I hesitated, a familiar voice cut through the ambient conversation. "Mother? What are you doing here?" I turned to find Tyler staring at me, Megan on his arm, both dressed with the casual elegance of people accustomed to such events. The surprise on his face quickly morphed into something else, assessment, perhaps even disapproval as he took in my appearance. "Tyler, what a coincidence," I managed, suddenly feeling like I'd been caught somewhere I didn't belong. "This is Jack Reynolds, a former student of mine. Jack, my son Tyler." Jack extended his hand with easy confidence. "Great to meet you. Your mother is being modest. She was the most influential teacher at Lakeside Elementary. Half the successful artists I know passed through her classroom at some point." Tyler shook Jack's hand briefly, his expression revealing nothing. I didn't realize Mom's students had gone on to such prominence. "Only the ones who listened?" Jack replied with a good-natured laugh. "I hear you work at Horizon Tech?" "I actually collaborated with them on a branding project last year. With the creative department, yes." Tyler nodded, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "I'm on the strategic side, market analysis, consumer behavior." Megan glanced around the gallery with practiced interest. "Your work is impressive, very, emotional." She said it like she wasn't entirely sure that was a good thing. "Mrs. Wilson, have you decided which piece you'd like?" Jack asked, smoothly redirecting attention. "Oh, I couldn't possibly—" "You're giving my mother a painting?" Tyler interrupted, something unreadable flickering across his face. "She earned it," Jack replied simply. "Your mother has an incredible eye for potential, in art and in people. I wouldn't be here without her influence." An awkward silence expanded between us until Megan spotted someone across the room and tugged at Tyler's arm. "Darling, there's the Harrises. We should say hello." Tyler hesitated, then nodded. "We should circulate. Nice meeting you, Jack." He turned to me, seeming unsure suddenly. Will you be? Are you staying long? A while yet, I replied, surprised by the uncertainty in his voice. Maybe we can talk before you leave. Something in his tone sounded almost like the boy I remembered, a hint of vulnerability beneath the polished exterior. I'd like that, I said softly. As they walked away, Jack studied me curiously. So that's your son? Somehow I pictured someone different. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. I ended up selecting a smaller piece from Jack's collection, a study in blues and golds that reminded me of summer mornings at Blue Pines Resort. Jack wrapped it carefully, refusing payment despite my protests. Consider it an investment in future works, he said with a wink. Now that you've reconnected with the art world, I expect to see your own pieces on display somewhere soon. His words stayed with me as I wandered through the rest of the exhibition, occasionally catching glimpses of Tyler and Megan across the room. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, him gesturing with understated authority as he spoke, her laughter musical and perfectly timed. They looked like they belonged in this world of success and sophistication, a world that had never been mine. I was preparing to leave, Jack's painting carefully tucked under my arm, when Tyler approached, alone. You're going? I thought we might get coffee, he said, glancing at the wrapped canvas. He really gave you that? Yes, he did, I replied, trying to read his expression. And another time for coffee, perhaps? It's getting late. Tyler shifted, uncomfortably. Listen, Mom, about your birthday. I really am sorry. Things have been intense at work and with the wedding plans. It's fine, Tyler, I interrupted, not wanting to have this conversation in a crowded gallery. We all forget things sometimes. No, it's not fine. I know it hurt you. He lowered his voice. It's just, everything's moving so quickly. Megan's family has all these expectations, and at work I'm up for promotion against people with MBAs from Ivy League schools. Sometimes I feel like I'm barely keeping up. For a moment, I glimpsed the pressure he was under, the constant need to prove himself worthy of the world he'd fought to enter. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. I reached out and straightened his collar gently, a maternal gesture from easier days. You don't need to explain, Tyler. I understand ambition. Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. Do you? Sometimes I think you've never wanted anything for yourself. The words stung more than he could know. There's a lot about me you've forgotten, I said quietly. Or perhaps never knew. Before he could respond, Megan appeared at his side, her smile tight as she glanced between us. There you are, darling. The Harrises are inviting us to their lake house next weekend. I said we'd love to come. Tyler's moment of openness vanished, replaced by his now familiar public face. Wonderful. I was just telling Mom we should reschedule. Coffee soon. Of course, Megan said smoothly. Perhaps after the wedding when things settle down. We're just swamped with details right now. I recognized the gentle dismissal for what it was. No rush. You both have plenty on your plates. As I walked to my car, Jack's painting secure in the trunk, I realized something important. The pain of Tyler's neglect was still there, but it no longer defined me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was curious about what tomorrow might bring for Rebecca Wilson, not just for Tyler's mom. The following Tuesday, I met with Carol, Diane's friend in real estate. She was a brisk, practical woman in her 60s who had reinvented herself after a divorce at 50, building a successful second career in luxury properties. Your house is in a good location, she said after reviewing the details. The Pine. Grove neighborhood has become trendy with young professionals who can't quite afford Westlake proper. With some cosmetic updates, you could get significantly more than you might expect. I'm not necessarily looking to sell immediately, I explained. I'm exploring options. Carol nodded approvingly. Smart. Never make major decisions under Pressure. She pulled out a tablet and showed me photos of several properties. These are some smaller homes and condos that might interest you, all in good locations, but requiring less maintenance than your current place. One property caught my eye. A compact, sun-filled cottage near the lake, with a glass-walled sunroom that would make a perfect art studio. It was more modern than my traditional home, more suited to a single person than a family, and something about its clean simplicity called to me. That one has been on the market 90 days, Carol noted, following my gaze. The owner is motivated. If you're serious, we could probably negotiate a very favorable price. I made a decision. I'd like to see it. The cottage was even better in person, smaller than my house, but thoughtfully designed, with lots of natural light and built-in storage. The sunroom faced east, offering perfect morning light for painting. Standing there, I could almost see myself at an easel, coffee cooling beside me as I worked in peaceful solitude. The owner is relocating for work, Carol explained as we toured the property. He needs to close within 60 days. I haven't decided to sell my house, I reminded her. This is just exploratory. Carol gave me a knowing look. Of course. But sometimes when the right place calls to you, other decisions become clearer. She was right. By the time we left the cottage, a plan was crystallizing in my mind. Tentative still, but increasingly compelling. I spent the evening making calculations, reviewing finances, considering possibilities I'd never allowed myself to contemplate before. The following week passed in a blur of appointments. The physical I'd scheduled revealed I was in excellent health, needing only to watch my blood pressure. The financial advisor confirmed what I'd suspected. Selling my house would provide enough capital to purchase the lake cottage outright and still have a modest sum to supplement my retirement savings. If I continued teaching for another 10 years, I could retire comfortably. But what if I didn't want to wait 10 years? What if there was another path? I found myself pulling out old sketchbooks, studying art tutorials online late into the night, researching local galleries and art fairs. One evening, I discovered that Blue Pines Resort, the place where Tyler and I had spent those precious birthdays, had expanded their programming to include art retreats and workshops. They were seeking instructors for their summer sessions. On impulse, I sent an inquiry, attaching some of my recent work. The response came the next day. Dear Ms. Wilson, thank you for your interest in our summer arts program. Your background in art education and your portfolio are impressive. We would be delighted to discuss the possibility of you leading a workshop series this summer. Many of our guests are families with children, and your experience would be invaluable. I read the email 3 times, a strange excitement building in my chest. Teaching art in the setting where Tyler and I had once been so happy together, there was a poetic symmetry to it, a way of honoring those memories while creating something new for myself. That weekend, I did something impulsive. I submitted an application to have my work considered for a small community art exhibition in Lakeside. The theme was renewal, and I had been working on a series of paintings inspired by the changing seasons at the lake, the place where I'd found moments of peace throughout my years of single motherhood. I told no one about the application or about my growing plans. These fragile new dreams felt too personal, too easily crushed by practical concerns or others' expectations. Instead, I focused on my teaching, on reconnecting with my art, and on the quiet, steady work of reimagining my future. 2 weeks passed. Tyler didn't call. I didn't reach out either, allowing the unusual silence between us to persist. Instead of dwelling on his absence, I threw myself into painting whenever I wasn't teaching. Decades of pent-up creativity flooded onto canvases, sometimes clumsy, sometimes surprisingly powerful. I wasn't creating masterpieces, but I was creating again, and that itself felt like a miracle. I'd nearly forgotten about the community exhibition when an email arrived. Dear Rebecca Wilson, we are pleased to inform you that your submission Seasons of Solitude has been selected for inclusion in the Lakeside Community Gallery's renewal exhibition. The opening reception will be held on Friday, June 8th at 7 p.m. June 8th, Tyler's birthday. The coincidence struck me as both ironic and fitting somehow. For years, that date had been devoted entirely to celebrating my son. This year, it would mark my own small step back into the world I'd abandoned when I became a mother. I printed the acceptance letter and pinned it to my refrigerator, a tangible reminder that Rebecca Wilson existed separate from her roles as mother and teacher. Each time I passed it, a small thrill ran through me. Pride, anticipation, and something else I couldn't quite name. Perhaps it was simply the unfamiliar sensation of putting myself first. The following Sunday, while I was working in my garden, a sleek black car pulled into my driveway. Patricia Brooks emerged, looking as immaculately put together as always in designer casual wear that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Rebecca, hello," she called, approaching with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I hope I'm not interrupting." I stood, brushing soil from my gardening gloves. "Patricia, this is unexpected." "Yes, well, I was in the neighborhood for a charity committee meeting and thought I'd stop by. We haven't had much chance to chat, just the two of us." She glanced around my modest front yard, her expression carefully neutral. "Your roses are lovely." "Thank you. Would you like to come in for tea?" Inside, Patricia perched on the edge of my living room sofa, declining refreshments. "I won't stay long. I just wanted to touch base about the wedding. There's been a slight change of plans." I braced myself, expecting to hear I'd been assigned some minor, out-of-the-way role in the ceremony. "The venue had a cancellation, so we've moved everything up to Memorial Day weekend. It's fortunate, really. The weather should be perfect, and it works better with Megan and Tyler's vacation schedules." I blinked, processing this information. Memorial Day? But that's less than 3 weeks away. "Yes, it's a bit rushed, but everything's under control. I've hired the best planners in Westlake." She smiled tightly. "I just wanted to make sure you have appropriate attire. The mother of the groom should complement the overall aesthetic." "I have a dress," I said, thinking of the blue one I'd worn to Jack's gallery. Patricia's smile thinned further. "Perhaps I could take you shopping? I know the perfect boutique in Westlake. My treat, of course." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Poor Rebecca. Can't even afford a proper dress for her son's wedding. I felt a flash of the same indignation that had been building since my forgotten birthday. "That's very thoughtful but unnecessary," I replied evenly. "I'm quite capable of dressing myself appropriately." Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. "Of course, I just know how challenging it can be on a teacher's salary to match the standard of a Brooks family event. I've managed to clothe both myself and Tyler adequately for 28 years, I said, my tone cooler now. "I imagine I can handle one more occasion." Something shifted in Patricia's expression, a reassessment. "You know, Rebecca, I've always admired how you raised Tyler on your own. It couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," I agreed, "but Tyler was worth every sacrifice." "Yes, well, he certainly turned out well." She adjusted her designer watch. "Megan says he's the most ambitious young man at Horizon. Nathan thinks he could make director within 5 years." "Tyler has always been determined," I said carefully. Patricia leaned forward slightly. "Between us, I think he's been good for Megan too. She's always been drawn to shiny things. Tyler has a solidity about him, a hunger to prove himself. It's refreshing in this age of entitled young people." The backhanded compliment hung in the air between us. My son was acceptable to the Brooks family not despite his humble beginnings, but because of them. His desperation to belong made him a safer bet than some privileged young man who took wealth for granted. "I should be going," Patricia said, rising. The rehearsal dinner will be at the Grand Westlake on Friday before the wedding, 7 o'clock. Black tie. She paused at the door. Oh, and Rebecca. The ceremony will be filmed for a wedding feature in Westlake magazine. They'll want some photographs of Tyler with you beforehand. Family background and all that. Perhaps wear something. Timeless. After she left, I sat in my quiet living room, equal parts angered and amused by the interaction. Tyler's future. Mother-in-law saw me as a quaint footnote in her daughter's marriage narrative, the struggling single mother who'd raised a diamond in the rough for Megan to polish and display. What would Patricia think if she knew about the lake cottage I was considering, or the art exhibition, or the summer teaching opportunity at Blue Pines? What would Tyler think? The wedding's new date presented a complication I hadn't anticipated. The Lakeside Community Gallery opening was scheduled for June 8th, but the pre-wedding events would now consume the last week of May. I could manage both, of course, but the timing felt symbolic somehow. The old life and the new overlapping, demanding I choose where to direct my energy and attention. For so long, there would have been no question. Tyler would come first. Always. But now, as I considered the path unfolding before me, one leading back into a world of creativity and possibility I'd thought forever closed, I wondered if it was finally time to prioritize differently. That evening, my phone rang. Tyler's name appearing on the screen for the first time since our brief encounter at Jack's Gallery. I hesitated before answering, aware of a new wariness I felt toward my son. Mom? His voice sounded strained. Did Mrs. Brooks come by today? Yes, she did. She told me about the wedding date change. He exhaled heavily. I wanted to tell you myself, but things have been crazy. Megan's family moves at lightning speed once they make decisions. I'm sorry you had to hear it from her mother. It's fine, Tyler. I paused, then asked the question that had been bothering me. Why the rush? Honestly, a combination of things. The venue had a cancellation, which supposedly never happens. And Megan's cousin is getting married in August. There's some family competition about who has the better wedding, and Megan didn't want to be compared. And he hesitated. I'm up for a major promotion. The timing works better for taking. A honeymoon if I lock it in before the quarterly review cycle. Always practical reasons. Always external factors driving decisions. I wondered when Tyler had last done something simply because his heart led him there. I understand, I said. Though increasingly, I wasn't sure I did. 3 weeks doesn't leave much time for preparations. The Brooks have it covered. Literally, they've insisted on handling everything. I just have to show up in the right tuxedo at the right time. He attempted a laugh that fell flat. Listen, Mom, about that dress Mrs. Brooks mentioned. I don't need her to buy me a dress, Tyler, I interrupted, a familiar irritation rising. I've managed to clothe myself my entire adult life. I know, it's just... This wedding is going to be in magazines, apparently. There will be a lot of important people there. Megan's family connections, executives from Horizon. It's a big opportunity for me to make the right impression. The implication hung between us, unspoken but clear. Don't embarrass me. I'm aware of how society functions, Tyler, I said, my voice measured. I may be just a public school teacher, but I do understand the concept of appropriate attire. A beat of silence, then. I didn't mean it like that. He sighed. Everything feels so complicated right now. There's so much pressure from every direction. Sometimes I miss the simple days. Remember when we used to go to Blue Pines for my birthday? Just you and me. No expectations, no politics. The mention of Blue Pines sent a jolt through me. Had he somehow sensed my plans? Or was it just coincidence? I remember, I said softly. You wanted to be a wildlife photographer back then. Tyler laughed, more genuinely this time. God, I'd forgotten about that. Had my little disposable camera, taking blurry pictures of squirrels and calling them art. They weren't that blurry, I defended. You had a good eye. Maybe in another life, he said dismissively. Not much room for wildlife photography and corporate marketing. I thought of my own rekindled passion for art, the way it had survived decades of neglect to flame back to life given the smallest opportunity. It's never too late to revisit old dreams, Tyler. Easy to say, harder to do when you have a mortgage that costs more than most people's salaries, he replied, a hint of his father's practicality in his tone. Anyway, I should go. Megan's waiting for me. We have a cake tasting appointment. After we hung up, I sat with my sketch pad open on my lap, thinking about the boy who had once been captivated by nature and light, who had written an award-winning essay about wanting to give his mother back her dreams. Somewhere along the way, that boy had been buried beneath layers of ambition and social climbing, his sensitivity paved over with pragmatism. I wondered if he was truly happy in the life he'd constructed, the high-pressure job, the status-conscious fiancé, the constant striving for more, bigger, better. Or had he simply convinced himself this was what happiness should look like? And what about me? Had I been any different, sacrificing my own dreams on the altar of practical motherhood? The thought was uncomfortable, suggesting a pattern I'd helped create without realizing it. The next day after school, I drove to the lake cottage again, this time alone. I stood in the sunroom, watching light play across the wooden floors, and made a decision. I called Carol. I'd like to make an offer on the cottage, I said without preamble, and I want to list my house. Are you sure? Carol asked, surprise evident in her voice. This is happening quickly. I've been thinking about it for longer than you realize, I replied. It's time for a change. That evening, I began the process of detachment, sorting through decades of accumulated belongings, deciding what to keep, what to discard, what to pass along. Each object held memories, some bittersweet, some purely joyful. Tyler's baby clothes, carefully preserved in tissue paper. Art projects from his elementary years, books we'd read together on rainy afternoons. I created a special box of items to give him, mementos of our life together that I thought he might value someday, even if he showed little interest now. Among them, I placed the letter from Blue Pines about his award-winning essay. Whether or not I ever shared it with him, it remained evidence of the thoughtful boy he had once been. As I worked, a strange lightness began to fill me. Not the absence of love for my son, but the presence of something new. Hope for myself, curiosity about what might be possible in this next chapter. For so long, I'd defined myself through Tyler's needs and accomplishments. Now, with my house in transition and new possibilities on the horizon, I was rediscovering the woman who existed apart from motherhood. By the end of the week, I had an accepted offer on the lake cottage, contingent on the sale of my house. Carol assured me the timing should work well. The spring market was active, and my home would likely sell quickly with minimal updates. We can list next week, she said. You could potentially close on both properties by early July. July, after Tyler's wedding, after the art exhibition, a clean break between old life and new. I hadn't told Tyler about any of it yet. Not the house sale, not the cottage, not the exhibition, certainly not the summer teaching opportunity at Blue Pines. Part of me felt guilty about keeping such significant changes from him, but another part recognized this silence for what it was. The first stirrings of independence, of choices made for myself rather than in relation to him. As I prepared for his wedding, shopping for a dress that would be elegant without calling attention to itself, arranging for time off from school for the pre-wedding events, I felt like I was straddling two worlds. In one, I was still Tyler's mother, playing my prescribed role in his life story. In the other, I was becoming someone new, an artist, a woman with her own path to forge. The dress I eventually found wasn't from an exclusive Westlake boutique, but from a small shop in Lakeside, owned by a former costume designer. It was a deep emerald silk that complemented my coloring perfectly, cut with an elegance that managed to be both timeless and contemporary. When I tried it on, the shop owner nodded approvingly. "That's the one," she said confidently. "You look like yourself in it." It was an odd comment, but I understood what she meant. The dress didn't try to make me something I wasn't. Younger, flashier, more conventional. Instead, it honored who I actually was. A woman of substance entering a new phase of life with quiet dignity. As May rushed toward its conclusion and Tyler's wedding loomed, I found myself increasingly calm amidst the swirl of events. The cottage by the lake was becoming more real in my mind. Not just a property, but a promise to myself. My paintings for the exhibition were complete, framed, and ready for display. Whatever happened with Tyler's wedding and our complicated relationship, I had created something of my own that would endure. The Sunday before the wedding week, I received an unexpected call from Jack Reynolds. "Mrs. Wilson, I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Jack, and please call me Rebecca." "Rebecca." Then, he sounded excited. "I wanted to let you know. I've been selected to jury a regional art exhibition this fall, and I remembered you mentioned you were painting again. I thought you might consider submitting work. The exposure could be significant." I was momentarily speechless. A regional exhibition was far more prestigious than the small community gallery where my work would soon appear. "That's incredibly kind of you to think of me," I managed finally, "but I'm just getting back into art after decades away. My work isn't ready for that level of scrutiny." "Why don't you let me be the judge of that?" Jack asked. "Literally, since I am one of the judges. Would you at least let me see what you're working on? No pressure, just professional curiosity." We arranged for him to visit the following afternoon. I spent that evening and the next morning in a state of nervous anticipation, setting up my recent canvases in the living room where the light was best. These paintings, my Lake series and newer works exploring memory and transformation, felt intensely personal, like pages from a private journal. The thought of having them evaluated by a successful professional artist like Jack was terrifying. When he arrived, I offered coffee and tried to act casual as he moved slowly from canvas to canvas, studying each in silence. His face revealed nothing as he examined brushwork, stepped back to consider composition, leaned in to inspect details. "These aren't what I expected," he said finally. My heart sank. Too amateur, I'm sure. "No." Jack turned to me, genuine surprise in his expression. "Too good. Rebecca, these aren't the works of someone getting back into art. There's a mature voice here, a confident perspective. Especially these." He gestured to the Lake series. "They're speaking to something universal through very personal experience. That's what great art does." "They're just paintings of the lake," I protested weakly. "No, they're paintings about solitude, about finding peace in liminal spaces, about watching one world from the shoreline of another." He studied me curiously. "You've been carrying these images inside you for a long time, haven't you?" I nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in my throat. "You absolutely should submit to the regional exhibition. In fact," he hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "The gallery where we met is planning a group show of emerging artists this winter. I'd like to include your work." "Emerging artists?" I laughed. "Jack, I'm 50 years old." "Age has nothing to do with emergence," he replied seriously. "It's about when an artistic voice finds its moment. Yours is finding it now." After Jack left, a contract for the winter group show tucked in my bag alongside submission information for the regional exhibition, I sat in my backyard watching twilight gather. Tomorrow would begin the week of Tyler's wedding, a week of rehearsals and photographs, family gatherings and social obligations. I would play my part gracefully, the supportive mother watching her son embark on his new life. But something fundamental had shifted. Tyler's path and mine were diverging in ways neither of us had anticipated. As I moved toward my own emergence, my own second act, I wondered if he would recognize the mother he had known, or if, like the boy who once wrote essays about birthday gifts and dreams of art studios, that person was already becoming a memory, beautiful but distant, like summer evenings at Blue Pines. The Grand Westlake Hotel lived up to its name, a gleaming monument to luxury rising 20 stories above the lakefront, its marble lobby adorned with fresh floral arrangements taller than most children. I arrived for the rehearsal dinner precisely on time, my emerald dress drawing a few appreciative glances as I made my way through the crowded reception area. A sign with elaborate calligraphy directed Wilson Brooks Wedding Guests toward a ballroom overlooking the water. I paused at the entrance, taking in the scene before me. Round tables draped in ivory linen surrounded a small dance floor, each centerpiece a miniature work of art featuring orchids and roses. A string quartet played softly in one corner, their music nearly drowned by the animated conversations of at least 100 guests. This was just the rehearsal dinner, a casual prelude to the main event, according to Patricia's standards. "You must be Tyler's mother." A tall man with silver hair and Patricia's unmistakable bearing approached, champagne flute in hand. "I'm Richard Brooks. Delighted to finally meet you." "Rebecca Wilson." I accepted his offered handshake. "Thank you for such a lovely event." "Hardly started yet," he laughed, gesturing around the opulent room. "This is just the warm-up. The real spectacle happens Saturday. Though between us, all this extravagance is Patricia's domain. I'd have been happy with something simpler. But when it comes to our only daughter..." He shrugged good-naturedly. "What can a father do but indulge?" There was something disarming about Richard's manner, a self-awareness his wife and daughter seemed to lack. Before I could respond, Tyler appeared at my side, handsome in a tailored suit I'd never seen before. "Mom, you made it." He kissed my cheek, his eyes quickly taking in my appearance. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." I smoothed his lapel in a familiar gesture. "New suit?" "Wedding gift from the Brooks." Tyler shifted slightly, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "They insisted. Something about the wedding photos being timeless." Richard Brooks laughed. "Patricia has strong opinions about menswear. I've learned not to argue after 30 years of marriage." He winked at me. "Free advice, Rebecca. Never try to out-stubborn a Brooks woman. We're known for our determination." "I'll keep that in mind," I replied with a smile, warming to his easygoing manner. "Tyler, why don't you show your mother to her table? I believe she's seated with your former piano teacher and that nice couple from your university days. What were their names? The archaeologist and his wife?" Tyler guided me through the crowded room, stopping frequently to introduce me to colleagues. From Horizon Tech, friends from college, and what seemed like half of Westlake's business community. I noticed how he straightened almost imperceptibly when speaking to senior executives, how carefully he pronounced certain names, as if their very syllables carried weight. "Everyone important is here," he murmured as we approached my table. Nathan from Horizon brought the entire executive team. That could be huge for my promotion prospects. I studied my son's face, the eager tension in his eyes, the careful way he surveyed the room, calculating connections and opportunities. When had my nature-loving boy transformed into this ambitious networker? Had it happened gradually, or had there been a moment of decision, a crossroads where he'd deliberately chosen status over passion? "Tyler." Megan appeared beside us, resplendent, in a pale blue designer dress, her diamond engagement ring catching the light as she placed a possessive hand on his arm. "Mom's looking for you. The Hendersons just arrived, and she wants to introduce you." "The Hendersons?" Tyler's eyebrows rose. "As in Henderson Capital?" "The very same. Daddy's been cultivating them as investors for months. She gave me a quick, perfunctory smile. Mrs. Wilson, so glad you could make it. You look nice. Is that dress from Lakeside? Before I could answer, she was already tugging Tyler away, whispering something urgent in his ear. He glanced back at me apologetically as they disappeared into the crowd. I settled at my assigned table, greeting Tyler's former piano teacher, a kind woman who'd been patient with his limited musical abilities, and the archaeologist couple who'd apparently once had Tyler in a freshman seminar he'd particularly enjoyed. They were pleasant companions, but I couldn't help noticing we represented the old life contingent, strategically placed at the periphery of the celebration. Throughout dinner, I watched Tyler and Megan navigate the room with practiced charm, stopping at each table to exchange pleasantries. They looked perfect together, he handsome and ambitious, she elegant and confident. When they reached my table, their visit was brief but cordial, Megan complimenting Mrs. Henderson's patience with Tyler's limited musical aptitude, while Tyler reminisced about the archaeology seminar that had opened his eyes to different cultures. They were playing parts, I realized, both of them, crafting narratives about themselves that would appeal to the room's power brokers and influence peddlers. Even Tyler's childhood was being rewritten as a quaint backstory in his rise to success. The humble beginnings that made his current status more impressive, rather than something to be hidden. Richard Brooks appeared at my table just as dessert was being served. "May I?" he asked, indicating the empty chair beside me. "Of course." He settled beside me with a sigh of relief. "I've fulfilled my social obligations for at least 15 minutes, he confided. Patricia has a strict schedule for these things. How long we must speak to each guest, which business connections need special attention. Exhausting, frankly. I smiled despite myself. It seems like quite a production. You have no idea. The wedding itself has a minute-by-minute itinerary thicker than most business proposals I've seen. He studied me curiously. Tyler tells, me you're an art teacher. Elementary school. For over 20 years now. Admirable profession. Underpaid and underappreciated from what I understand. There are other compensations, I replied. Seeing a child discover their creativity for the first time is its own reward. Richard nodded thoughtfully. I imagine you've influenced many young lives over the years, including Tyler's, of course. He speaks highly of you, you know. The comment surprised me. Does he? When he's not trying to impress my wife and daughter, yes. Richard's eyes twinkled with amusement. In unguarded moments, he's mentioned your sacrifices, how you always put his needs first. That kind of dedication leaves an impression. I glanced across the room where Tyler stood with his arm around Megan's waist, laughing at something Nathan Chen was saying. I sometimes wonder if I did him any favors, I admitted, teaching him that other people's needs should always come before his own. Richard followed my gaze. He's trying very hard to fit into our world, he observed. Perhaps too hard. Between us, I worry he may lose himself in the process. Megan can be demanding, like her mother. Tyler has always been adaptable, I said carefully, even as a child. Adaptable is one thing, surrendering your identity is another. Richard's expression turned serious. Forgive me if this is too forward, but I sense you're at a crossroads yourself, Rebecca. Am I wrong? His perception startled me. What makes you say that? Something in your eyes. I recognize it because I see it in the mirror sometimes. The look of someone calculating the cost of choices made and wondering about roads not taken. He smiled wryly. I was an architect once, did you know? Before I joined Patricia's family business. I designed buildings that would never exist because the real money was in commercial real estate development. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Less often now that I've found ways to keep that part of myself alive. I fund a scholarship for architectural students. I design elaborate tree houses for my nieces and nephews. He shrugged. We all make compromises. The question is whether we let them erase us entirely. Before I could respond, Patricia appeared, her smile tight as she placed a hand on her husband's shoulder. Richard, darling, the Hendersons are asking about the yacht club expansion. Could you join us? He stood with a resigned smile. Duty. Calls. It was a pleasure talking with you, Rebecca. I hope we'll have more opportunities before the weekend is through. After he departed, I sat watching the celebration unfold around me. The string quartet had given way to a small jazz ensemble, and several couples now moved across the dance floor. Tyler and Megan were surrounded by a circle of admirers, her laugh carrying across the room as she recounted some amusing anecdote. They looked happy, I realized. Or at least, they looked like they were playing their parts convincingly. Perhaps that was its own kind of happiness. I was preparing to leave when Tyler broke away from his group and approached my table. Heading out already? The night's just getting started. It's been lovely, but I should go. I have school tomorrow. Tyler glanced around to ensure we weren't overheard, then lowered his voice. Listen, Mom, I wanted to ask you something. Mrs. Brooks mentioned she offered to take you shopping for a dress. I found something perfectly appropriate on my own, I said, an edge creeping into my voice despite my efforts to remain neutral. I'm sure you did. It's just... He hesitated. For the ceremony itself, they've arranged a certain aesthetic. For the photographs, everyone's coordinating in specific shades of blue and silver. Megan was hoping. That is, we were hoping you might consider wearing this. He withdrew a small jewelry box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a silver and sapphire necklace, elegant, expensive, and utterly unlike anything I would choose for myself. It's from both of us, he added quickly, a gift, to thank you for everything. I stared at the necklace, understanding with perfect clarity what it represented. Not gratitude, but control. A way to ensure I fit the aesthetic of Tyler's new life. The final erasure of the mother who had packed bag lunches and sewn Halloween costumes, replaced with an appropriate accessory for wedding photographs. Tyler, I said carefully, the necklace is beautiful, but it doesn't really suit me. I already have something planned for the ceremony. His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Mom, please, this is important to Megan, to both of us. In that moment, I saw how much my son had changed, or perhaps how much he had revealed himself. The boy who once wrote essays about birthday presents and art studios had become a man who valued appearance over authenticity, who would ask his mother to be less herself to better fit his narrative. I'm sorry, Tyler. I can't wear something. That doesn't feel true to who I am. Not even for your wedding. He withdrew the box, his disappointment palpable. I don't understand why you're being difficult about this. It's just a necklace. Is it? I looked at him steadily. Or is it about making me fit a certain image? About erasing the parts of me, of us, that don't match the story you're trying to tell? Tyler's face flushed. That's not fair. I'm just trying to make this special day perfect for everyone. Perfect according to whose standards? Yours? Megan's? Her mother's? Why does everything have to be a battle with you lately? He demanded, frustration breaking through his carefully maintained facade. First, you ignore my texts for weeks, then you show up here looking like... He stopped himself, but it was too late. Looking like what, Tyler? Like the woman who raised you? The teacher who sacrificed her own dreams so you could chase yours? A tense silence stretched between us. Around us, the party continued, oblivious to our quiet confrontation. I didn't mean it like that, Tyler said finally, his voice softening. You look beautiful, Mom. You always do. It's just different from what Megan's family is used to. Different isn't always bad, I replied gently. Sometimes it's just authentic. Something flickered in Tyler's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of the growing distance between us. Not just physical or social, but a fundamental divergence in values. "I should get back," he said, glancing toward where Megan stood watching us with barely concealed impatience. "The photographer wants some posed shots before people start leaving." "Of course." I touched his arm lightly. "I am happy for you, Tyler. I hope you know that." He nodded, though I wasn't sure he believed me. As he walked away, I gathered my things and slipped out of the ballroom, the sounds of celebration fading behind me. The night air was cool as I walked to my car, stars visible above despite the city lights. I felt strangely liberated, as if, by refusing the necklace, that small act of resistance, I had reclaimed something essential about myself. The next morning, an email from the art gallery confirmed the details for the June 8th exhibition. My paintings would be displayed in the main room, with the opening reception running from 7 to 9 in the evening. The timing would be tight, with Tyler's wedding on Memorial Day weekend, but manageable. Two separate worlds, coexisting without intersection. School passed in a blur that day, my mind alternating between thoughts of the wedding and my own emerging plans. During my lunch break, I received a call from Carol. "Rebecca, I have news. We've received an offer on your house." I nearly dropped my sandwich. "Already? We just listed yesterday." The market is hot right now, especially in Pine Grove. The buyers are a young couple expecting their first child. They love the established neighborhood and proximity to good schools. She paused. "There's just one thing. They're hoping for a quick closing, within 30 days if possible. They're currently in a rental that ends soon." 30 days. That would put the closing right around Tyler's wedding. What about the lake? Cottage. Where does that stand? The owner is still eager to sell. We could potentially coordinate both closings for the same day if you're willing to move quickly. I thought about the timing, the wedding, the exhibition, the end of the school year, all converging in a perfect storm of transition. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Let's do it," I said, surprising myself with my certainty. "Make the arrangements." That evening, as I packed away another box of household items, books I no longer needed, kitchen gadgets rarely used, my phone rang. It was Howard Jenkins, the principal. "Rebecca, sorry to bother you at home, but I wanted to catch you before rumors started flying. The school board approved our budget for next year." He sounded troubled. "There's good news and bad news." "Give me the bad first," I said, sitting down on a packing box. "We're facing cuts across all specialty programs: art, music, physical, education, all reduced to part-time positions starting in September." I absorbed this, a strange calm settling over me. "And the good news? You have seniority. If you want to keep a full-time position, you could split your time between art and regular classroom teaching. Third grade needs coverage." 5 years ago, this news would have devastated me. The reduction of art education, the prospect of returning to regular classroom teaching when I'd specialized for so long. Tonight, it felt almost like confirmation, a sign pointing toward the new path already forming before me. "Howard, I appreciate you letting me know," I said carefully. "But I think this might be the universe telling me it's time for a change. Rebecca, don't make any hasty decisions. We value you tremendously." "It's not hasty," I assured him. "I've been considering my options for a while now. This just helps clarify the timing." After we hung up, I sat surrounded by half-packed boxes, the remnants of my teaching career, and felt a curious lightness. One by one, the ties binding me to my old life were loosening. Tyler moving into a new family circle, my house sold, my job changing beyond recognition. Even the universe seemed to be conspiring to push me toward reinvention. The next day, I officially accepted the summer teaching position at Blue Pines Resort. The program director was thrilled, especially when I proposed a special workshop series on nature-inspired art for families. "That's perfect for our clientele," she enthused. Many of our guests are looking for meaningful activities they can enjoy together. When can you start? Early June, I replied, my new timeline taking shape. After the school year ends. With that commitment made, I contacted the superintendent's office and arranged a meeting to discuss retirement options. After 23 years in the district, I qualified for early retirement with reduced benefits. Not ideal financially, but not impossible either, especially with the proceeds from my house sale and the income from summer teaching. The school week ended, giving way to the final countdown to Tyler's wedding. Saturday morning dawned clear and perfect, as if Patricia Brooks had somehow arranged favorable weather conditions along with every other detail of her daughter's special day. I arrived at the Grand Westlake 2 hours before the ceremony as instructed. Emerald dress carefully protected in a garment bag, my mother's vintage pearl earrings, the ones Tyler had always called my special occasion treasures, tucked safely in my purse. The hotel's bridal suite had been transformed into a styling headquarters, with separate areas for hair, makeup, and final dress preparations. Patricia spotted me immediately as I entered. Rebecca, there you are. The mother of the groom preparations are in the adjacent room. Tyler mentioned you declined the necklace we selected. Her tone made the question sound like an accusation. I have family jewelry that holds special meaning, I explained, keeping my voice pleasant but firm. She pressed her lips together briefly, then nodded. Very well, the makeup artist is waiting for you. I submitted to professional styling, allowing the makeup artist to enhance my features while insisting on a natural look. Nothing too dramatic, I specified. I want to look like myself, just polished. When I finally slipped into my emerald dress and added my mother's pearls, I caught sight of my reflection and felt a surge of quiet confidence. The woman in the mirror looked elegant but authentic, not trying to compete with the Brooks family's opulence, but not diminished by it either. Mom? Tyler appeared in the doorway, handsome in his tailored tuxedo, his expression softening as he took in my appearance. You look really beautiful. Thank you. I straightened his boutonniere. Gently, you're quite dashing yourself. He glanced over his shoulder, then stepped further into the room, lowering his voice. About the other night, the necklace thing. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pushed. The apology surprised me. It's all right, Tyler. No, it's not. He ran, a hand through his carefully styled hair, a gesture from childhood that suggested genuine distress. I've been thinking about it a lot. You were right. I was trying to make you fit some image that isn't really you. That wasn't fair. I studied my son's face, seeing a glimmer of the thoughtful boy I remembered. What brought this on? He hesitated. I had a conversation with Richard, Megan's dad. He said some things that made me think about choices and compromises and not losing yourself in the process. Tyler shook his head. He actually reminds me of you sometimes, the way he sees beyond the surface of things. A knock at the door interrupted us. The wedding coordinator, clipboard in hand, looked harried. Mr. Wilson, we need you for the formal photographs immediately. We're on a very tight schedule. Tyler squeezed my hand quickly. We'll talk more later, okay? There's something else I wanted to ask you about. As he hurried away, I wondered what else could be on his mind on his wedding day. The moment of connection had been brief, but significant. The first time in months Tyler had seemed truly present with me, not just going through motions or managing appearances. The wedding ceremony itself was a masterpiece of planning and execution. Flowers cascaded from archways, string musicians played sophisticated arrangements of classical pieces, and the golden late-afternoon light streamed through the hotel's floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the proceedings in a warm glow. I watched from my front row seat as Tyler stood at the altar, his posture perfect, his expression a careful blend of joy and solemnity. When Megan appeared at the back of the hall, on her father's arm, a collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the assembled guests. Her gown was a marvel of design, traditional yet fashion-forward, the train extending dramatically behind her. As Richard Brooks escorted his daughter down the aisle, I caught his eye briefly. He gave me a subtle nod of acknowledgement, and I wondered again about our conversation, about what he might have said to Tyler to prompt that moment of self-awareness. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly, vows exchanged, rings presented, the kiss perfectly timed for maximum photographic impact. As Tyler and Megan recessed down the aisle as husband and wife, I felt a complicated mixture of emotions: joy for my son's happiness, nostalgia for the boy he had been, and a strange sense of completion, as if one chapter was closing definitively while another opened before me. The reception that followed was even more elaborate than the rehearsal dinner. Ice sculptures, a 10-piece orchestra, gourmet food stations representing cuisines from around the world. I circulated as expected, accepting congratulations from distant relatives and Tyler's college friends, smiling for photographs, and participating in the carefully choreographed mother-son dance. "You're quiet," Tyler observed as we moved across the dance floor to a tasteful arrangement of "What a Wonderful World." "Just taking it all in," I replied. "It's quite a spectacle." Patricia Brooks doesn't do anything halfway. He glanced toward where his new mother-in-law stood directing the photographers. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if we'd had more resources when I was growing up. If you hadn't had to struggle so much. The comment stung despite his obvious lack of malice. We didn't just struggle, Tyler. We also loved and laughed and built a life that meant something. He looked down at me, really seeing me for perhaps the first time that day. "I know that, Mom. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. It's just seeing all this." He gestured at the opulent surroundings. "Sometimes I wonder if I could have made things easier for you somehow." "By becoming successful, you mean? By marrying into wealth?" He flushed slightly. "That sounds terrible when you put it like that." I didn't mean it to. I squeezed his hand gently as we continued dancing. "But Tyler, you should know, I never measured our life together by what we lacked materially. The only thing that ever mattered was that we had each other." The music ended, and Tyler was immediately claimed by Megan for photographs with the Brooks family's business associates. I retreated to a quiet corner of the reception, sipping champagne and observing the celebration from a slight distance. Richard Brooks found me there, looking slightly rumpled despite his expensive tuxedo. "Weddings," he sighed, settling into the chair beside me. "So much fuss and expense for a single day." "It's a beautiful celebration," I offered. "It's a production. Worthy of Broadway," he countered with a wry smile. "But if it makes Megan happy, I suppose that's what matters." He studied me thoughtfully. "You seem remarkably calm amidst all this chaos." "I've had practice finding stillness in difficult moments." "A valuable skill." Richard swirled his scotch contemplatively. "I spoke with Tyler yesterday. You know. He asked me how I balance my own interests with the demands of the Brooks family enterprises." That explained Tyler's change in attitude. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That I nearly lost myself before I realized no amount of success is worth surrendering your core identity. That compromise works both ways in healthy relationships." Richard shrugged. Whether he takes that advice to heart remains to be seen. "Megan seems quite determined," I observed carefully, "like her mother." Richard's expression was fond but clear-eyed. Strong women, both of them. Not always easy to live with, but never boring. The trick is maintaining your own center of gravity in their orbit. He glanced across the room to where Patricia was orchestrating the cake cutting. "I think Tyler has more spine than he sometimes shows. Reminds me of someone else I've recently met." He raised his glass in a subtle toast to me. Before I could respond, the wedding coordinator appeared, summoning us for more formal photographs. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of toasts, dances, and carefully coordinated events, each moment captured by the professional photography team for posterity and for the promised magazine feature. It was nearly midnight when Tyler and Megan made their grand exit, sparklers illuminating their path to a waiting limousine that would take them to the airport for their honeymoon in the Maldives. I stood among the well-wishers, my heart full of complicated emotions as I watched my son begin this new chapter of his life. As the excitement died down and guests began departing, I gathered my things, prepared to return to my half-packed house and the quiet reality of my own transitions. Patricia Brooks intercepted me near the exit, her perfect makeup still immaculate despite the late hour. "Rebecca, before you go." She pressed a small box into my hands, a small token of appreciation for raising such a wonderful young man. "Tyler is a credit to your parenting." Inside the box was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a miniature painter's palette. It was tasteful, expensive, and surprisingly thoughtful. "Megan mentioned Tyler told her you used to paint," Patricia explained, watching my reaction carefully, "that you gave it up to raise him properly. I thought perhaps—" Well, it's never too late to revisit old passions, is it? The sentiment was unexpectedly kind coming from a woman who had seemed determined to minimize my role in Tyler's life. "Thank you, Patricia. That's very thoughtful." She nodded, a flicker of genuine emotion crossing her carefully maintained expression. "I may come across as controlling. Richard certainly thinks so." A small, self-aware smile. "But I do recognize dedication when I see it. What you did for Tyler, raising him alone, ensuring he had opportunities, that takes remarkable strength. Different from mine, perhaps, but strength nonetheless." With that surprising acknowledgement, she turned away to attend to departing guests, leaving me staring at the bracelet and reconsidering my assumptions about Tyler's new family. The drive home was peaceful, city lights giving way to the darker streets of Pine Grove. My house was quiet when I arrived, boxes stacked in the hallway, walls bare where family photographs had once hung. In the kitchen, the refrigerator door still held the acceptance letter for the community art exhibition, now just 2 weeks away. I removed my mother's pearl earrings carefully, placing them in their velvet box for safekeeping. The woman in the mirror looked tired, but strangely serene, as if having witnessed the formal transfer of her son to his new life had freed her to fully embrace her own emerging path. The next morning, I woke early despite the late night. Tyler and Megan would be over international waters by now, beginning their honeymoon and their married life. I made coffee and took it to the backyard, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades that reminded me of my own canvases. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jack Reynolds, checking if I'd submitted my application for the regional exhibition. I typed a quick response. "Not yet, but I will today. Promise." As I hit send, another message arrived, this one from Tyler. "Landed safely. Thanks for everything yesterday. You were right about being authentic. It matters more than fitting. In. We'll talk when I get back. Lots to catch up on. Love you, Mom." I read the message twice, touched by the sentiment and the timing. My son was beginning his new life, but perhaps our relationship wasn't ending, just changing, evolving into something different, but potentially more authentic than the strained connection of recent months. With renewed energy, I turned my attention to the tasks before me, finalizing the house sale, preparing for the exhibition, completing the school year with my students. The days ahead would be full of challenges and transitions, but for the first time in decades, those changes felt like opportunities rather than obligations. The bracelet Patricia had given me caught the morning light as I reached for my coffee cup. I studied the painter's palette charm thoughtfully. It was never too late to revisit old passions, she had said. As I looked out at the sunrise, a canvas, of possibilities painted across the morning sky. I knew with absolute certainty that she was right. The week after Tyler's wedding passed in a flurry of activity. I submitted my retirement paperwork to the school district, confirmed the final details for the lake cottage purchase, and scheduled movers for the last week of June. Each task completed felt like another step toward my new life, a life I was increasingly eager to begin. My students sensed the change in me, though I hadn't officially announced my retirement. "Ms. Wilson, you seem different," observed Lily, a perceptive third grader, as she worked on her watercolor landscape. "Like you're excited about something." "I'm excited about your beautiful painting," I deflected, smiling as I helped her blend colors for a more realistic sunset. The truth was more complex than I could explain to an 8-year-old. I was excited, yes, but also terrified, wistful, and strangely liberated, a cocktail of emotions I hadn't experienced since my early 20s, before life's responsibilities had narrowed my horizons. On Wednesday afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Diane, my restaurant owner friend. "Rebecca, the strangest thing just happened. A young man came into the restaurant asking about you. Said he was doing research for a special project and wanted to contact you. He seemed sincere, so I gave him your email address. Hope that was okay. He said his name was Michael Turner. Ring any bells?" The name meant nothing to me. I sent a quick reply thanking Diane for the heads up, assuming Michael Turner might be a former student or perhaps someone connected to the art exhibition. That evening, as I sorted through a box of Tyler's childhood mementos, deciding which to keep, which to pass along to him after his honeymoon, my email pinged with a message from the mysterious Michael Turner. "Dear Ms. Wilson, my name is Michael Turner. You don't know me, but I believe I may have information that would be significant to both of us. I'm currently in Westlake on business and would appreciate the opportunity to meet with you briefly. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow afternoon?" I realize this request must seem unusual coming from a stranger. I assure you my intentions are respectful and my purpose genuine, though I prefer to explain in person rather than via email. Sincerely, Michael Turner. I stared at the message, intrigued despite my natural caution. There was something about the formal tone, the careful wording, that suggested sincerity rather than deception. Still, I wasn't naive enough to meet a complete stranger without taking precautions. "Mr. Turner," I replied. "I'd be willing to meet at Brood Awakening on Main Street tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's a public place with plenty of afternoon traffic. Before I commit further, may I ask how you know of me and what your special project entails?" His response came quickly. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for your prompt reply. I completely understand your caution and agree that Brood Awakening at 4 p.m. tomorrow would be perfect. As for how I know of you, I'm a genealogist by profession. My current project involves tracing family connections for a private client. Your name emerged during my research in a way that suggests you might have information valuable to my client. I prefer not to share more details via email to protect everyone's privacy. I will be wearing a navy blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. I look forward to our conversation. Michael Turner. A genealogist? My family history was hardly complex or mysterious. My parents had both died years ago, and I had no siblings or extended family worth mentioning. What possible interest could a private client have in my modest lineage? Curiosity overrode skepticism. I confirmed the meeting and spent the next day distracted, mentally reviewing my family tree for anything that might interest a professional researcher. By the time I arrived at Brood Awakening, 5 minutes before our arranged meeting, I had convinced myself this was probably a case of mistaken identity. Michael Turner was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 coffee cups before him. He rose as I approached, a tall man in his early 30s with kind eyes and a serious demeanor that matched the formality of his emails. The navy blazer and leather portfolio were exactly as described. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for coming. I took the liberty of ordering you a latte, but please feel free to change it if you prefer something else. The latte is perfect, thank you. I settled across from him, studying his face for any hint of familiarity. So, Mr. Turner, you said you're a genealogist? Please, call me Michael. He opened his portfolio and removed a business card, sliding it across the table. Turner Genealogical Research. I specialize in complex family histories and reconnecting estranged relatives. The card looked legitimate, but I remained cautious. And why exactly would a genealogist be interested? In me? Michael hesitated, his expression becoming more serious. Ms. Wilson, what I'm about to share may come as a shock. I want to assure you that I've verified all information thoroughly before approaching you. He removed a manila folder from his portfolio. Are you familiar with the name Eleanor Grant? The name hit me like a physical blow. Eleanor was my mother. She died when I was in college. Heart failure. Michael nodded, making a note. And your father was James Wilson, correct? Yes. He passed about 10 years after my mother. I frowned, increasingly confused. But surely this information is public record. Why would you need to meet me in person to confirm it? Because I'm not researching your parents, Ms. Wilson. Michael took a deep breath. I'm researching your son. Tyler? Why would anyone hire a genealogist to research Tyler? A sudden, uncomfortable thought occurred to me. Is this something to do with the Brooks family? Some kind of background check they failed to mention? Michael shook his head. No, Ms. Wilson. This has nothing to do with the Brooks family. He opened the manila folder, revealing a document that looked like a birth certificate. I've been hired by a man named William Turner. No relation to me, despite the shared surname. Mr. Turner has reason to believe he may be Tyler's biological father. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. That's impossible, I said automatically. Mark Davis is Tyler's father. He left when Tyler was small, but there's never been any question about paternity. Michael's expression remained gentle but resolute. Ms. Wilson, I understand this is difficult to hear, but my research suggests otherwise. He slid the birth certificate toward me. This is Tyler's original birth certificate from county records. The father is listed as unknown rather than Mark Davis. I stared at the document, my hands shaking slightly. It was indeed Tyler's birth certificate, his date of birth, the hospital name, my own information as mother. And there, in the space, for father's name, a stark, bureaucratic unknown. This must be a mistake, I insisted, though a cold certainty was already settling in my stomach. Mark's name should be there. We were together when Tyler was born. Were you married at the time? No, we married later when Tyler was almost 2. Michael nodded as if this confirmed something. And during the pregnancy, was there any uncertainty about paternity? The question pierced through decades of careful reconstruction. Memories I'd buried deep resurfaced with startling clarity. That difficult summer before my senior year of college, the temporary breakup with Mark, the brief, intense relationship with Will. The panic when I realized I was pregnant, the calculation of dates, the desperate hope that the baby was Mark's so we could reconcile and build the family I'd always wanted. Ms. Wilson? Michael prompted gently. There was someone else, I admitted, my voice barely audible over the coffee shop's ambient noise, before Mark and I got back together. His name was Will. I looked up sharply. William Turner? Michael nodded. Mr. Turner was a graduate student at Westlake University that summer, working on his master's in environmental science. He remembers meeting a young art student named Eleanor Rebecca Wilson, who went by Becca. No one had called me Becca in nearly 30 years. Hearing the name now, in this context, made me feel as if I were splitting in two. The established Rebecca Wilson, elementary art teacher and Tyler's mother, observing this conversation from a distance while Becca, the young woman with dreams and complicated relationships, sat vibrating with recognition. "How did he find me after all this time?" I asked, struggling to maintain composure. "Mr. Turner never stopped thinking about you," Michael explained. "He returned to his home state after graduation and built a successful environmental consulting firm. He married, had children, eventually divorced. Last year, his daughter gave him a DNA ancestry test kit as a birthday gift." Michael removed another document from his folder. The results included an unexpected close relative match, a 99.8% probability of a parent-child relationship with someone whose profile username was Tyler1996. Tyler had done one of those DNA tests 2 years ago, curious about his medical predispositions. He'd mentioned the results casually, primarily European ancestry, nothing surprising. What he hadn't mentioned, what perhaps he hadn't even noticed, was that the test had sent his genetic information into a database where his biological father could find him. "Mr. Turner was shocked," Michael continued. "He knew there was a possibility you might have had a child, but he had no confirmation until that DNA match appeared. He hired me to locate you discreetly, to determine if you would be open to communication before he reached out directly." I took a sip of my latte, buying time to process this seismic shift in reality. For 28 years, I had maintained a narrative about Tyler's origins, that he was Mark's son, that our reconciliation had been genuine, that our brief marriage had been founded on love rather than obligation. I had believed that narrative myself for so long that the truth felt like fiction. "Does Tyler know about this?" I asked, suddenly terrified that my son had discovered this bombshell through a website notification rather than from me. "No," Michael assured me. "The DNA service only shows the match exists, not additional identifying details unless both parties opt in to sharing that information. Tyler would know a close genetic relative exists, but not Mr. Turner's name or contact information." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a new anxiety. "So, what does William want? Financial support? A relationship with Tyler? It's been 28 years. "Mr. Turner isn't seeking financial entanglement," Michael said firmly. "He's built a successful life and has no need for support or compensation. As for a relationship with Tyler..." He hesitated. "He would like the opportunity to know his son, yes. But he's aware that decision belongs to Tyler, and by extension, to you. He's prepared to respect whatever boundaries you establish." "And if I say no? If I don't want this disruption in our lives?" "Then I would report back that you're not interested in pursuing contact, and Mr. Turner would respect that decision." Michael's expression softened. "But he did ask me to share something with you, regardless of your choice." He reached into his portfolio and removed an envelope, sealed and addressed simply to Becca. The handwriting was achingly familiar, the same neat script that had once filled margins of shared textbooks with comments and observations, that had composed poetry and heartfelt letters during that long-ago summer. "He wrote this for you," Michael said, sliding the envelope across the table. "Whatever you decide about moving forward, he wanted you to have it." I took the envelope, its weight seemingly disproportionate to its size. "I need time to think about all this." "Of course." Michael closed his portfolio and stood. "Take whatever time you need. My contact information is on my card. If and when you're ready to discuss next steps, just call or email." He paused, then added quietly, "For what it's worth, Ms. Wilson, Mr. Turner described you as the most authentic, creative person he'd ever known. He said whatever you've done with your life, he was certain you'd have made it meaningful." After Michael left, I sat alone at the table, the envelope burning a hole in my purse, my mind reeling with implications. Will Turner, the passionate environmental student who'd shown me how to see the natural world with new eyes, who'd talked about saving wilderness areas and making a difference through science-based activism. Will, who'd disappeared from my life, when he received a prestigious research opportunity across the country, leaving me heartbroken until Mark's renewed attention healed the wound. Or had it? Had I simply substituted one relationship for another, chosen security over passion, respectability over uncertainty? And Tyler, my steady, serious son who'd once dreamed of photographing wildlife before ambition and expectation redirected his path. How much of Will was in him without either of them knowing? The love of nature, the artistic eye, the idealism gradually buried beneath practicality. I finally opened the envelope as the coffee shop emptied around me. Will's letter was several, pages long, handwritten in the same careful script I remembered. Dear Becca, how strange it feels to write that name after so many years. I've thought of you often, wondering where life took you, what became of your art, whether you found happiness. I never imagined technology would provide the answer in such an unexpected way. I want you to know I don't approach this situation lightly or with any intention to disrupt lives long established. When I left Westlake that August, I had no idea you were pregnant. Had I known, nothing would have taken me away. No research opportunity, no career advancement. I would have stayed. Becca, I would have done my best to be worthy of both you and our child. The DNA test results were a shock, but also a gift. Confirmation that a part of me has existed in the world all these years, unknown to me but nonetheless real. I've looked up your son online. Our son? Even writing those words feels presumptuous. Tyler appears to be an accomplished young man. You clearly raised him well. I don't know your circumstances, whether you married, whether Tyler grew up believing another man was his father, what stories shape your family narrative. I have no wish to shatter foundations or create pain where there is peace. But I would be lying if I said I don't yearn for the chance to know him, to see in person the remarkable human being who carries forward parts of both of us, and yes, to reconnect with you, the woman who once showed me how to really see the world through an artist's eyes. Whatever you decide about moving forward, please know this: I respect your life and choices. If your answer is no, I will understand. I've enclosed my contact information if you wish to reach out directly. The choice now, as it always has been, remains yours. With lasting respect and affection, Will. Enclosed with the letter was a business card. William Turner, Ph.D., Environmental, Solutions International, and a small faded photograph. It showed a much younger version of myself sitting on a lakeside dock, sketchbook on my lap, laughing at whoever held the camera. I remembered that day at Lake Weston, how Will had insisted on capturing what he called my true self, the artist. At work, surrounded by nature, completely unself-conscious. I hadn't seen that version of myself in decades. She seemed like a stranger now, that laughing young woman with dreams as vast as the sky reflected in the lake waters. The coffee shop was closing. I gathered my things and walked slowly to my car, Will's letter tucked safely back in its envelope. The early evening air was warm, hinting at the summer to come, a summer that now promised to be even more transformative than I had imagined. As I drove home, memories surfaced unbidden. Will pointing out the mathematical patterns in pine cones, his passionate arguments for conservation, the way he'd encouraged my art when others saw it as merely a hobby. I remembered his gentle intensity, so different from Mark's practical ambition. Mark, who had claimed Tyler as his own until the responsibilities of fatherhood grew too burdensome. Had he known? Had he suspected Tyler wasn't biologically his, using that private doubt to justify his eventual abandonment? Or had he simply been too young, too self-centered to rise to the challenge of parenthood regardless of biology? I thought of Tyler, newly married and beginning his adult life with the Brooks family's wealth and connections smoothing his path. How would this revelation affect him? Learning that the father he resented for leaving wasn't his father at all. That his biological father had never known he existed, that his mother had maintained a fiction for his entire life. By the time I reached home, one thing had become clear. I couldn't make this decision alone. Tyler deserved to know the truth, to have a voice in whether to connect with Will Turner. But the timing was complicated. He was currently honeymooning with his new wife, presumably focused on beginning their life together rather than re-examining his origins. I opened my laptop and navigated to William Turner's company website. There he was, older than in my memories, his dark hair now silver at the temples, but with the same thoughtful eyes and warm smile. His biography listed impressive accomplishments: pioneering, work in sustainable development, advisory positions with international conservation organizations, numerous published papers. There were photos of him accepting awards, speaking at conferences, working in the field. In one image, he stood beside a younger woman who shared his eyes and smile, identified in the caption as Dr. Turner with daughter Emma at the Global Conservation Summit. He had children, which meant Tyler had half-siblings he'd never known about. The implications kept expanding, ripples from a stone dropped into still water. This wasn't just about me, or even just about Tyler and Will. It was about extended families, about identity and inheritance in the broadest sense. I closed the laptop, overwhelmed by possibilities and complications. Tomorrow I would need to make decisions, consider next steps, plan a way forward. But tonight, I allowed myself to remember the passionate, creative young woman I had been, the road not taken, the connections severed and potentially restored. As I drifted toward sleep, one thought kept returning. How strange that just as I was reclaiming my artistic self, embracing a future centered on creativity and personal fulfillment, the past would resurface to remind me of who I had been before life narrowed my horizons. Was it coincidence or something more meaningful? A convergence of identity? A return to authenticity in all aspects of life? The next morning brought clarity and purpose. I emailed Michael Turner, confirming that I would like to move forward, with direct contact with William, but requesting time to tell Tyler first. Michael's response was prompt and understanding. Ms. Wilson, I'll inform Mr. Turner of your decision. He completely agrees that Tyler should hear this news from you first, and will wait to make direct contact until you indicate the time is right. Mr. Turner also wants to assure you he has no intention of interfering in Tyler's life or marriage. He simply wishes for the opportunity to know his son at whatever level Tyler is comfortable with. With that understanding established, I faced my next challenge: how and when to tell Tyler. He and Megan would return from their honeymoon in 3 days. Ideally, I would have preferred to wait until they had settled into married life, giving them time to establish a routine before introducing this disruption. But practicality intervened. The house closing was scheduled for the following week, after which I would be moving to the lake cottage. If I wanted to tell Tyler in person, in familiar surroundings, it needed to happen soon. I texted him, "Hope? The honeymoon is wonderful. When you're back, could you come by the house? Something important I need to discuss with you. Just you, not Megan, if possible. Nothing bad, just private family matters." His response came hours later. Back Friday. "Evening. Could stop by Saturday morning around 10. Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I assured him. "Just need to talk. See you Saturday." With that timeline established, I turned my attention to my own transitional tasks. The art exhibition opening was now just over a week away, scheduled for the evening of Tyler's birthday. I confirmed final details with the gallery, delivered my framed paintings, and reviewed the printed program that featured a short biography and artist's statement I'd written about my return to creating after decades focused on teaching and parenting. The next day brought another email from Howard Jenkins, the principal, asking if I'd reconsidered the part-time teaching position for fall. I crafted a gentle but firm response. "Dear Howard, after careful consideration, I've decided to retire, fully from classroom teaching." The past 23 years at Lakeside Elementary have been deeply rewarding, but it's time for me to pursue other creative and educational opportunities. I've accepted a position teaching summer art workshops at Blue Pines Resort, and am exploring additional avenues to share my passion for art education outside the traditional school setting. Putting my decision in writing made it real in a way nothing else had. I was actually doing this, closing the chapter on my teaching career, selling my house, moving to the lake cottage, pursuing art professionally for the first time since college. Even without the William Turner revelation, it would have been a period of extraordinary transition. Friday afternoon, I received a text from Tyler confirming our meeting the next morning. I spent the evening in careful preparation, organizing my thoughts, gathering documents, including Will's letter and the photograph he'd sent. I barely slept, rehearsing different approaches to the conversation, anticipating Tyler's possible reactions. Saturday dawned bright and clear. I made coffee and arranged simple pastries from the local bakery, Tyler's favorites from childhood. At precisely 10 a.m., his car pulled into the driveway, the sleek luxury sedan that seemed to symbolize his new life. He looked rested and relaxed when I opened the door, his honeymoon tan giving him a healthy glow. "Mom?" He greeted me with a quick hug. "Place looks different. Are you redecorating?" "Not exactly," I replied, leading him to the kitchen. "Coffee?" "Please." He settled at the familiar table, glancing around at the half-packed boxes visible in the adjoining room. "Seriously, what's going on? Are you moving or something?" "Actually, yes." I handed him coffee in his old favorite mug, a handmade ceramic piece he'd created in his high school art class. But that's only part of what I wanted to talk about. Tyler's expression shifted from relaxed to concerned. "Mom, are you in financial trouble? Because Megan and I could help. Our wedding gifts were incredibly generous and—" "I'm not in trouble, Tyler," I interrupted gently. "In fact, I'm doing very well. I've sold the house and purchased a small cottage near the lake. I'm retiring from teaching to focus on my art. There's an exhibition of my work opening next weekend at the Lakeside Community Gallery." Tyler stared at me, coffee forgotten. "You? What?" "Mom, that's a lot of major life changes all at once. Are you sure about this? I mean, the house. This is our home. All our memories are here." "The memories come with us, Tyler," I said softly. "And yes, I'm very sure. It's time for me to make some changes, to focus on what I want for this next chapter of my life." "What brought this on?" He looked genuinely confused. "Is this because I got married? Because you feel like I don't need you anymore?" "No, though your wedding did help clarify some things for me." I took a deep breath. "Do you remember Jack Reynolds, my former student who's now a professional artist?" Tyler nodded slowly. "From the gallery that night, the guy who gave you a painting." Jack reminded me that I've been an artist all along, even when I wasn't actively creating. He helped me see that it's not too late to reclaim that part of myself. I hesitated, then added, "But there's something else we need to discuss. Something more significant." "More significant than selling our family home and completely changing careers?" Tyler's attempt at humor couldn't mask his growing apprehension. "Tyler, what I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear, and I want you to know that every decision I've ever made was with your best interests at heart." I reached for the manila envelope containing Will's letter and the birth certificate copy Michael Turner had provided. "It's about your father." Tyler's expression hardened. "What about him? Has Mark suddenly reappeared after all these years?" "No, it's—" I struggled to find the right words. "Tyler, Mark Davis isn't your biological father." The silence that followed was absolute. Tyler stared at me, his face cycling through emotions too complex to name. "What are you talking about?" he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Before I reconciled with Mark, during a time when we were separated, I was briefly involved with someone else. When I discovered I was pregnant, the timing was uncertain. Mark and I had just gotten back together, and I desperately wanted to believe you were his. He assumed you were, and I never corrected that assumption. Tyler's hands had tightened around his coffee mug until his knuckles whitened. So my entire life has been based on a lie? The father I resented for abandoning us wasn't even my father? It's more complicated than that, Tyler. Mark chose to be your father. He was there for your early years. The fact that he left later doesn't erase that choice. But he wasn't my real father, Tyler insisted, his voice rising. And you knew. All these years you knew and never told me. Yes, I admitted. At first, I truly wasn't certain. Later, when I might have been more sure based on your developing traits and interests, you were already forming your identity around being Mark's son, even after he left. I didn't want to disrupt that, to make you feel even more abandoned. Tyler pushed away from the table, standing abruptly. So who is he? My real father? Some random college boyfriend you'd rather forget? No, Tyler. His name is William Turner. He was a graduate student in environmental science when we met. He left Westlake for a research position before I knew I was pregnant. He never knew about you until recently. I opened the envelope and removed the materials. Last year, he discovered your connection through a DNA ancestry test. Tyler froze. The genetics kit? The one I did for health information? I nodded. It matched you as his son. He hired a genealogist to find me, to see if I would be open to contact before approaching you directly. So he knows about me now? This William person? Yes. And he would like to meet you if you're willing. I slid Will's letter across the table. He wrote this for me, but I think you should read it too. Tyler made no move to take the letter. Why are you telling me this now? After 28 years, why drop this bomb on me just when my life is finally coming together? New job, new marriage, new connections through Megan's family. I recognized the fear behind his anger, fear that this revelation might somehow threaten the security and status he'd worked so hard to achieve. I'm telling you now because you deserve to know the truth, Tyler, because William Turner deserves the chance to know his son, and because I'm tired of building our relationship on carefully maintained fiction. I paused, then added quietly, You asked what brought on these changes in my life. Part of it is realizing how much of myself I've suppressed over the years, how many truths I've kept hidden for the sake of appearances and comfort. So, this is some kind of midlife authenticity crisis? Tyler paced the kitchen, agitation evident in every movement. You decide to blow up your life and mine in the process? I'm not blowing up anything, Tyler. I'm finally being honest. With you. With myself. You're a grown man now, married, building your own life. You don't need me to protect you from complicated truths anymore. Protect me? Is that what you think you were doing? His voice cracked slightly. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up believing your father left because you weren't enough? To spend your entire childhood trying to be perfect, to be worth coming back for? The pain in his words cut through me. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I thought I was sparing you additional hurt, but I see now that my silence caused its own kind of damage. He shook his head, turning away. I need time to process this. It's too much. I understand, I said softly. Take whatever time you need. But Tyler, please read William's letter before you make any decisions about meeting him. He seems like a good man who genuinely wants to know you. A good man? You barely knew him, by your own admission. Tyler's tone was bitter. A summer fling that resulted in an inconvenient pregnancy. It wasn't like that, I protested. Will was important to me, special. In another world, another life, perhaps we might have. I trailed off, aware that my own might-have-beens were of little comfort to Tyler in this moment. "Does Megan know about this?" Tyler asked suddenly. "No, of course not. I wanted to tell you first, privately." He nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Good. Let's keep it that way for now." He glanced at his watch. "I should go. I told Megan I'd only be an hour or so." "Tyler, please take the letter. And my cell will be on if you want to talk more about any of this. The house sale, the exhibition. William, all of it." He hesitated, then picked up the envelope. "I'm not promising anything about any of it. I know, just think about it." After Tyler left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, replaying our conversation, wondering if I could have handled it better. The hurt in his eyes had been visceral, his sense of betrayal palpable. I had anticipated anger, confusion, even rejection, but the raw pain had caught me off guard. Had I done the right thing, finally sharing this truth after so many years? Or had I simply unburdened myself at Tyler's expense, disrupting his sense of identity just when he was establishing his new life? I thought of Will Turner's letter, his gentle understanding, his willingness to respect boundaries. I thought of the photograph, that laughing young woman who had once been me, full of creativity and passion before practicality narrowed my choices. I thought of Tyler as a child, focused intently on capturing wildlife with his camera before ambition and expectations redirected his path. So many parallel losses, so many buried authentic selves. Perhaps that was what connected us all. Will, Tyler, and me, beyond genetics or shared history. Perhaps that was what made this revelation necessary, however painful the process might be. As afternoon faded toward evening, I resumed packing, carefully wrapping cherished items in preparation for the move. Whatever happened next, with Tyler, with William, with my new artistic pursuits, one thing was certain. There would be no more hiding, no more suppressing truth for the sake of comfort or convenience. For better or worse, I had chosen authenticity, with all its messy, complicated implications. The woman in the lakeside photograph would have expected nothing less. June 8th arrived with perfect clarity, both the weather and my purpose crystalline as I finished hanging the last painting in the Lakeside Community Gallery. My lake series occupied the central wall, each canvas capturing a different season and mood of the waters that had sustained my spirit through difficult years. Beside them hung newer works created during my recent awakening, abstract explorations of memory and identity that felt more vulnerable, more authentically me than anything I'd shared before. "The lighting is perfect," Emma Torres observed, adjusting a spotlight to better illuminate my signature piece, Remembered Light, a sunset over blue pines painted from memory. As the gallery's assistant curator, she'd been instrumental in helping prepare for tonight's opening. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," I admitted with a laugh, "but ready, I think." The week since my revelation to Tyler had passed in tense silence. Despite several tentative text messages, he hadn't responded beyond a brief, "still processing, need time." I'd respected his request for space, focusing instead on finalizing my move. The lake cottage was now officially mine, the old house emptied of everything except what would remain for the final weekend. The timing had aligned with almost artistic precision, one life ending as another began, with tonight's exhibition, opening serving as the bridge between worlds. I hadn't told Tyler about the significance of the date. After everything else, reminding him that tonight was his birthday felt like unnecessary pressure. If he remembered on his own and chose to attend, that would be meaningful enough. If not, I would understand. He had every right to his anger, his sense of betrayal. What I hadn't expected was the email that arrived as I left the gallery that afternoon, preparing to return later for the opening reception. "Mom, I read the letter, all of it, several times. I've also done some research on William Turner. His Work in environmental conservation is genuinely impressive. Looking at his photos, I can see the resemblance now. The eyes especially. I don't know if I'm ready to meet him yet. But I think I'm ready to talk more about all of this. About the past, and maybe about the future too. Would it be okay if I came to your exhibition tonight? Megan has a charity event with her mother, so it would just be me. Let me know. Tyler. My hands trembled as I typed my response. Nothing would make me happier. Opening starts at 7. Your work has always been bringing people together through art. Hope to see you there. I returned home to prepare for the evening, choosing a simple dress in deep teal that made me feel both professional and authentically myself. Around my wrist, I fastened the silver bracelet with the painter's palette charm, Patricia Brooks' surprisingly thoughtful gift. Then I added my mother's pearl earrings, a tangible connection to my own lineage. The woman in the mirror looked back at me with clear eyes and quiet confidence. Neither the uncertain young Becca nor the self-effacing Ms. Wilson, but someone new. Someone integrated. Rebecca, the artist. Rebecca, the mother. Rebecca, the woman finally coming into her own. The gallery was already filling with people when I arrived at 6:45. Friends from the school district, neighbors from Pine Grove, local artists and collectors invited by the gallery. Diane arrived with a small group from her restaurant exclaiming, "Over the paintings with genuine enthusiasm." Even Howard Jenkins made an appearance, congratulating me on a remarkable new chapter while lamenting the loss to Lakeside Elementary. At precisely 7:15, as I was speaking with a potential buyer interested in one of my lake paintings, the gallery door opened. Tyler stood framed in the entrance, more casually dressed than I'd seen him in months, jeans and a simple button-down rather than his usual business attire. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and he gave me a small, tentative smile before making his way toward my exhibition space. "Mom," he said simply when he reached me, "these are incredible. I had no idea you could paint like this." "Thank you," I replied, emotion tightening my throat. It feels good to be creating again. He studied Remembered Light intently, recognition dawning in his eyes. "This is Blue Pines, isn't it? Where we used to go for my birthdays." "Yes, I painted it from memory." "It's exactly how I remember it." He turned to me, his expression soft with reminiscence. "You know what today is, don't you?" "Of course I do. Happy birthday, Tyler." He laughed quietly. "Some birthday. Finding out your whole origin story is different than you thought." But there was no bitterness in his tone, just a kind of wondering acceptance. "I've been thinking a lot this week," he continued, moving to examine another painting. "About identity, about choices, about who I've been trying to become these past few years." "And what conclusions have you reached?" He shook his head slightly. "Still working on that. But I did realize something important. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I was worth keeping, worth loving. First with Mark, then with Megan's family, even with my colleagues at Horizon." He met my eyes directly. "I think maybe I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to impress anyone." The insight took my breath away. So profound, so self-aware. That sounds like a worthwhile journey. I thought maybe. He hesitated. I thought maybe meeting William might be part of that journey, not to replace Mark in my history, but to understand another piece of where I come from, another part of who I am. "I think that's a wonderful idea, if you're ready." I squeezed his arm gently. "William has agreed to wait until you're comfortable." "There's no rush." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe after you're settled in your new place? We could meet somewhere neutral, the coffee shop maybe." "That sounds perfect." As we talked, more gallery patrons filtered through the exhibition. Several stopped to compliment specific paintings, a few even placing red sold dots beside their favorites. The gallery owner approached with a glass of champagne for each of us, beaming with satisfaction. Rebecca, your show is a tremendous success. We've already sold 5 pieces, and there's serious interest in 3 more. The Lake series is especially resonating with people. As she moved away to attend to other guests, Tyler raised an eyebrow. 5 paintings sold already? Mom, that's incredible. It feels surreal, I admitted. Like I'm living someone else's life. Or maybe you're finally living your own, Tyler suggested. The one you put on hold for so long. Before I could respond, the gallery door opened again. Jack Reynolds entered, scanning the room until he spotted me, then making his way through the crowd with purpose. Rebecca, I promised I'd stop by. He embraced me warmly, then stepped back to survey the exhibition. Absolutely stunning work. The regional exhibition committee would be impressed. Tyler, you remember Jack? I made the introduction. He's been incredibly supportive of my return to art. The 2 men shook hands, Tyler regarding Jack with newfound interest. You were her student? At Lakeside Elementary? Best art teacher? In the state? Jack confirmed with a grin. Changed my life. Now I'm trying to return the favor by getting her work the wider recognition it deserves. As they chatted about the art world and Jack's own career trajectory, I excused myself briefly to speak with other guests. From across the room, I watched my son engaged in animated conversation with my former student, both of them gesturing toward my paintings with evident appreciation. 2 lives I'd influenced, now connecting independently of me, the continuity both surprising and deeply satisfying. The evening continued in a pleasant blur of conversations and congratulations. By closing time at 9 p.m., 7 paintings displayed, sold markers, and the gallery owner was ecstatic about scheduling a follow-up show in the fall. As the last guest departed, Tyler lingered, helping me gather my purse and the small gift bag of opening night mementos the gallery had prepared. Dinner? He suggested, to celebrate your success. And maybe my birthday too while we're at Dortier. We ended up at a quiet restaurant by the lake, sharing a bottle of wine and comfortable conversation that carefully skirted difficult topics while acknowledging their existence. As we finished dessert, a slice of chocolate cake with a single candle that Tyler blew out with a self-conscious smile, he reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small wrapped package. I almost forgot. I brought you something. It's your birthday, I protested. I should be giving you gifts. Just open it. Inside the wrapping paper was a vintage silver frame containing the photograph from Blue Pines, Tyler at 12, proudly holding up his first caught fish, his smile wide and uncomplicated, my arm around his shoulders. I remembered the moment perfectly, a Sunday morning during his birthday weekend, the lake misty and peaceful around us. I found this while going through some old albums, Tyler explained. Thought you might want it for your new place, to remember. It's perfect, I whispered, touched by the gesture. Thank you. He hesitated, then added, I was thinking, maybe we could go back there sometime. To Blue Pines, see if it's still the same. I'd like that, I replied, not mentioning my summer teaching position at the resort. Some revelations could wait for another day. Very much. We parted with a genuine hug. The tension of the past week eased, if not entirely. Resolved. As I drove home to my half-empty house, I felt a profound sense of alignment, as if disparate parts of myself were finally moving in harmony rather than opposition. The following morning, I woke early and wrote 2 important emails. The first, to Michael Turner, confirming that I had spoken with Tyler and that he was cautiously open to meeting William in the near future. The second, to William himself. Dear Will, after 28 years, it feels strange to be writing to you directly. Michael has likely informed you that I've told Tyler the truth about his parentage. He's processing this significant revelation with remarkable maturity and has expressed interest in meeting you when he feels ready, likely within the next few weeks. In the meantime, I thought you might like to see the attached photograph. It was taken at Blue Pines Resort during Tyler's 12th birthday celebration, one of our annual traditions. Looking at it now, I can see so much of you in him, not just physically, but in his focused intensity, his connection to the natural world. There's much more to share, of course, a lifetime of stories and memories that belong to you as well as to us. Perhaps we can begin that conversation soon. With warmth, Rebecca. I attached a scanned copy of the framed photograph, then hit send before I could second-guess myself. Within an hour, I had a reply. Dear Rebecca, words cannot express what it meant to receive your email, to see that photograph of our son. Thank you for this gift, and for your openness to reconnection after so many years. I look forward to meeting Tyler whenever he feels comfortable. And perhaps, if you're willing, to reconnecting with you as well. It seems we have much to learn about the lives we've lived in parallel all these years. With gratitude and hope, Will. As I prepared for my final weekend in the house that had sheltered so many chapters of my life, I felt a sense of completion rather than loss. The past wasn't being abandoned but integrated, acknowledged, learned from, carried forward with new understanding. Tomorrow I would move into the lake cottage, arrange my remaining paintings in the sunlit studio space, prepare for my summer workshops at Blue Pines. Soon, Tyler would meet his biological father, adding another dimension to his evolving sense of self. Beyond that lay possibilities I couldn't yet envision. Art exhibitions, new relationships, creative paths not yet discovered. For now, it was enough to stand in this moment of perfect balance between past and future, memory and possibility, the woman I had been and the one I was becoming. I had given my son the gift of truth, and in doing so, had claimed it for myself as well. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't. Want to pass these up, just click and check them out.